employees come in and say, I haven't slept for days, worrying about this. You've had employees come in and say, I haven't even told my family that I've lost my job. I still need to deal with that.
Whoa.
So, there's a sensitivity when it comes to employment law, I think, because of the responsibilities that people have.
Let's talk DXB. Real conversations by real people. Thenji, thank you, because an employment partner, I know how busy that you must be. So I'm very grateful. I'm grateful for anyone. I say this every episode. Anyone that gives me their time, I'm very, very grateful for you doing that. So thank you.
Really excited to be here. So thank you for inviting me.
So as I said, you're an employment partner. And I can imagine what comes with that as well. And I think it takes a special personality to be able to deal with employment cases.
Thank you.
You're doing great things. You've been awarded as Employment Lawyer of the Year. I saw that award. And it's just fantastic to see how your profile and the great things that you're doing in the market as well. Real life cases.
Yeah.
But I always ask my guests to tell me more about them, because a lot of the time I'm still quite new to, meeting them. So tell me more about you.
Well, I've been in the UAE for 12 years, so a long time. Yeah. And it's been a really interesting time, certainly as a lawyer. Yeah. Before that, I was in the UK. Okay. Before that, I was in South Africa. Before that, I was in Zimbabwe. So, I've lived in many different countries. Yep. And I do feel that coming to the UAE is a great fit because there is that kind of real expat international feel, which I really kind of identify with.
Yeah, fantastic.
Myself.
Yeah. And so I can see that you're doing great things in Dubai, obviously.
Thank
you.
It
seems like you're really enjoying being here and all that you're doing. I wanted to touch on some common questions, probably that a lot of people will have, I'm sure you faced as well, and you're seeing in your day-to-day. Mm-hmm. So one of the main things is lots of people are still moving into Dubai. It's still a place where people want to grow their careers. They want to live here. The lifestyle is great. Obviously, it's growing, it's thriving. I didn't look into this. So I've been here 10 years. And when I transferred with my firm many moons ago. And I think I just heard leaving the rain, going to sunshine, a better opportunity careers-wise. Obviously, I was thinking about that, but I didn't really look into contracts or the nitty-gritty of what should I be asking for? What does the law actually say? So if someone is looking to move to Dubai or just landed and, looking at their contracts, what are some of the non-negotiables that they need to be aware of?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And you're right. People don't actually consider the law. They just think about the sunshine and the lifestyle.
Yeah. Tax-free.
Tax-free. And it's really quite interesting that increasingly more people are taking advice before they even leave, their home countries. So I find that I'm getting more inquiries before people leave. And I think that's sensible. People are asking about, compensation packages. People are asking about medicals. People are asking real questions that will help them make an informed decision as to whether they want to come to the UAE. Yeah. So quite rightly, I do work with individuals, but I do work with corporates as well. So I have a mixed bag in terms of my own caseload, which is nice because it's varied. One time you're dealing with work culture and policies and procedures, but then next time you're dealing with an individual who's lost their job or has suffered discrimination. So when you're coming to the UAE, common questions are about compensation. So basic salary and allowances. People have never heard of end of service gratuity, for example. So end of service gratuity is a statutory benefit that all employees get, and it is calculated on the basic salary only and not allowances. So you'll sit, let's say in the UK, and be like, I'm getting, let's say, 10,000 dirhams. What you don't know is that is usually divided into basic and allowances. What you should look at is what the split is. Yeah. And really the lowest, I would say, is 50-50. Right. Market rate is 60%, 40%. But we found some companies that will do all in, right? Okay. And that will impact your end of service gratuity, which is really your severance package at the end, just to explain what that is. Yep. What some people don't know is that, for example, when it comes to leases, that most landlords will want one check, two checks.
Yes.
And
I found this when I first arrived arrived.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And most people are coming, say, from the UK like yourself, and they're used to paying checks on a monthly basis. It doesn't happen here.
Yes.
So these are the type of conversations that you want to speak to your employer about. Is there a housing allowance?
Yep.
Can I get it paid up front? How does it work? Because that will assist. People don't know about the medicals. Some people have HIV, or they have TB, or, some of the illnesses that means they will not pass their medicals.
Yeah.
So we've had situations where people come to the UAE, they've resigned, they've maybe sold their house, they have taken their kids out of school, and they come here and they don't get past the medicals.
So then they go, obviously they have to go back home.
Well, absolutely. So, sometimes the impact of that.
Yes.
So the more proactive the employers are at informing their candidates, this is what the requirements are in the UAE, really does assist in that process. People don't look at school fees.
Yeah. As a mother now, I realise the importance of school fees.
Absolutely. So school fees allowance is another important consideration. I spoke to someone who had 5 children.
Whoa.
Not so long ago. He was actually based in Ireland. He called me and we were looking at his compensation package. And I asked, do you have dependents? He said, yeah, I've got 5 children. And I said, well, okay, so have you actually looked at school fees? And he hadn't,
Probably didn't know it's an option either, maybe?
Didn't know it's an option, didn't know that, most of the expat kids will go to private schools, and the school fees are something to take into account.
Yeah.
So also just to help with that kind of negotiation, when you are negotiating your contract, it's very difficult to negotiate terms and conditions when you're on the ground.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you need to do all your negotiation before you actually come out,
Really
to understand that even at the end of employment, repatriation, yes, you might get a ticket, but can I also negotiate my shipping? Some people have really good contracts. They have negotiated their pets.
What?
Yes. I had someone who had negotiated for his grand piano to be shipped back to his home country at the end. So, the more you seek some advice about things that might not be that obvious.
Yes, yeah.
I think it is really, really, really important, because it's a completely different jurisdiction.
Massively.
Medical insurance. What type of medical insurance do they offer?
Yep.
Does it cover my pre-existing conditions?
So important.
Those are the type of discussions and questions that perhaps just one consultation will be kind of beneficial. So I find increasingly people being more proactive when it comes to their move.
I think that's so smart. All of these bits, I was like, damn. I never thought about any of this
Flights
stuff.
home.
I literally just came. I was like, I'll figure it out, etc. Obviously a lot younger, no dependents then, but you're completely right about asking all of that detail. Because when you're here, you're not thinking about, it's not working out, I can't afford to actually live in the UAE, because I didn't really understand all that comes with it. So your advice is very valuable. One point that you mentioned as well, which is, I find, a common topic, is people getting fired. You lose your job in Dubai. Some people say it's unfair dismissal. There's a lot of different layers to unfair dismissal. What have you seen with this? Because I hear so many stories. I mean, obviously, I don't want to make it like a UAE Dubai thing, but living here, I think it's even scarier and probably more heightened, because you lose your job. That's your visa, your salary, or all of the things that come with it. So what are you seeing around dismissal, and what should people know if that's happened?
I think, look, termination is sensitive, right? Because it's your security. It's your future plans. We're all here. We know in the UAE, when you look at the working community, it's 95% expats. So we know that most of the expats who are here, they either come for employment or someone in their family has. So we're wholly dependent on that, and it's linked to the immigration status, to the visas. So there is a heightened sense of fear when an individual loses their job because of that exposure. When you look at the notice period, it's 30 days, right? So the statutory minimum is 30 days. So if you have only 30 days to try and find alternative employment, sometimes it's not sufficient. it's great that people are taking advice and looking at perhaps extending their notice period, so we can see some people with 90 days, especially seniors. Yeah. And we also see changes in the law, positive changes in the law, where the grace period is being extended, which is great, to 90 days. We're seeing the unemployment insurance kick in. So there are positive moves. But we still find employers who are not terminating employees for legitimate grounds. So what does the law say was your question? The law says you can terminate an employee for good cause, for good reason, right? Legitimate reason. Yes. And I think we still have those managers that, have what Tollywood and come and say, you're fired for no reason.
When you say good reason, I was like,
Yeah, exactly. It says good reason. So it needs to be a legitimate reason for termination. And, the new law that came out last year is great because it also has some guidance in the exec regulations. So, if you're a poor performer, there is a procedure to follow, warning, give the employee the opportunity to improve, and have it well documented so that if the employee doesn't improve their performance, you're in a position to say, look, we're terminating you for good cause, for good reason. Yeah. And I think slowly but surely, employers are becoming more conscious and aware that there are procedures. Right. Because also employees are becoming a lot more aware of their...
Smarter and aware, yes.
Exactly. Yeah. So they're also becoming aware that, look, this is an unfair termination. I just rocked up to work. My manager looked at me funny and I was out the door, right? So I have kind of good cause for a complaint. Or, sometimes employees file a complaint before they're even terminated, which really puts them in a better position to like a grievance. Okay. And then they're terminated and are able to claim unfair dismissal or arbitrary dismissal. So we are finding that employees are more aware of their rights. Yep. Increasingly, employers are following their procedures a lot more, but there's still a lot of work to be done. Staff handbooks. Many companies have these amazing policies and procedures, but if you ask an employee, have you seen the policy? They're like,
no idea.
Where does the staff handbook stay? So a lot of work needs to be done just in terms of not just having great policies, procedures, but making sure the employees understand them, access them, and that managers are well trained to make sure that when there is a genuine cause of concern, that it is dealt with appropriately. The number of cases that I have where a company will come and seek advice and say, oh, actually, we need to get rid of this employee. Right. Okay, so what steps have been taken? Oh, we haven't really done anything. Oh, is it documented? No. So that is a process in itself. Yeah. So I do feel that companies are becoming better at managing, termination, and employees are also, standing up for their rights. So it's an exciting time to be an employment lawyer.
Yeah, I can imagine, because obviously all that comes with being fired in a country that is not your home. Like you said, all of the security being stripped away, and then having that lack of knowledge of, you might walk out to be like, was that fair dismissal? I don't know. I'm too scared to go to the courts. I don't speak Arabic. All of these small things that everyone's like, I don't even know how to navigate in terms of even raising an employment issue here. So are you seeing that? I'm sure people come to you to say, I think I've been unfairly dismissed, but actually I've left and I've signed the paperwork to agree to the... Is there anything they can do afterwards, or it's too late?
Look, I think always seek advice. If you can seek advice before you sign anything, that would be great. Look, I work with, for example, the DMCC Dispute Centre, where employees freely, go and seek assistance within the dispute centre. They will have a consultation. If there is a termination, they will mediate. The Ministry of Human Resources and Emiratisation, Ministry of Labour, they do mediation. So not every dispute has to go to court.
Got it. Okay.
Certainly when I have an individual client, we will always try and contact the employer as well and say, look, this is a situation. Can we talk? Can we try and resolve it? Yep. Yeah. So like when I look at my overall caseload, the number of cases that actually go all the way to court are not that many. We're able to resolve them. We have a high success rate in being able to settle matters amicably, because at the end of the day, litigation is expensive. It's time consuming. And I think employees are well aware in terms of, going to the Ministry of Labour and filing a complaint. And they have the mediation meetings, quite quickly. Okay. So those are the options that are available to them.
Right.
If the employees are in a free zone, there is a labour centre where you can file a complaint and they will mediate. And the whole point of that mediation process is to try and reduce the, litigation process, because that's long and hard and expensive. But in some cases, if the parties are too far apart, then litigation is the only way.
Yeah, that's it. I didn't know that these options were there. I thought it was literally like you have to go to court and go through that lengthy, expensive process as well. Yeah. That probably removes a lot of that kind of stress around it's going to be stressful anyway. And before we hit roll on the camera, I was saying your role must also be a therapist, particularly when you're dealing with individual matters, because it's so sensitive. Yeah. So I wanted to ask what are you seeing when it comes to cases where I've been fired or I think there's discrimination, and we'll get into anti-discrimination because I think that's a topic that I really wanted to learn more about. How do you navigate that as an individual to support that person but also stay quite neutral? Yeah,
I think it's quite difficult, especially for individuals, because by the time they come to us, and most of the time it's their first experience in a law firm. So usually when I'm dealing with an individual, they'll say, actually, this is my first consultation. I've never needed to consult a lawyer, so I don't even know how it works. So I think I've always been quite approachable. I try and take the legal out of the law.
I can sense that from you, which is great.
And I always just say, look, tell me your story in your own words and let's chat. Okay. So that ability to, give an individual that kind of environment that they kind of feel free to express their concerns is really important. But also telling employees, being able to manage their expectations is very important. So I always say to individual clients, look, if you come to me, I want you to leave in a better position than you were when you came in. So in some cases, the advice is actually, I don't think this is a runner. Right. This.
Very honest. Good.
Very honest. Yeah. Your employer's done everything. The offer on the table is a decent one. Take it. Yeah. And then in some cases, I'm dealing with awful cases where it's like, absolutely, we should take this forward. But it's very important to try and remove the emotion from it. Yeah. But we've had cases of very sensitive cases, pregnancy discrimination, first day back from maternity and you're fired, or, ill treatment when they come back from maternity. We've had race discrimination, blatant, which is, kind of a story for later on. But there are some experiences that are sensitive, and there are some cases where, we had a case I remember where the client says, look, I'm having suicidal thoughts here. And, immediately there is that concern that, okay, we need to kind of recommend, you need to get help, you need to get treatment, what support are you having? Whereby, they're in that environment. I've had employees come in and say, I haven't slept for days. Worrying about this. You've had employees come in and say, I haven't even told my family that I've lost my job. I still need to deal with that. Whoa. So, there's a sensitivity when it comes to employment law, I think, because of the responsibilities that people have. Yeah. They have a lot of responsibility when they come here. And, when you lose your job, it's extremely traumatic. So,
massively.
It's therapy as well.
I'm sure, but for you to kind of even have a client sit in front of you and say, I wouldn't even know how to react. I've said before, I absorb a lot of people's emotions. So I would be in that with them crying. It just feels so heavy. So it's a skill set that you have to be able to kind of maintain neutral, but also show empathy.
Empathy is extremely important. Yeah. And, letting an employee take their time, or the client take their time to explain it. Yeah. You're dealing with employees from different backgrounds. So, there's a cultural sensitivity when it comes to, your interactions and so forth. But I think, we've got a good track record.
Yeah, we're highly experienced. So obviously you've seen and heard a lot, but it's just so good and reassuring to know that there's different ways of handling it. I think a lot of people think, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to go to court and it's going to be expensive, etc. But again, having good lawyers that are quite honest to say, no, kind of just leave it for your peace of mind. This is fine. Or actually, I'm here to support you. I think that alleviates a lot of stress.
Yeah.
So I talked about anti-discrimination because I know there was an anti-discrimination law that I don't know if it's come to force or yet, but I was reading about it because I was like, how do you prove discrimination in a workplace? And then how do you enforce that if you feel like you've been discriminated against? Yeah. Again, I'm not just saying it's a Dubai issue, but obviously living here for 10 years, you do hear of potential discrimination within a workplace where that person has felt probably overwhelmed and has had to just ignore it and leave if that's the case. So, tell me more about the anti-discrimination law.
Yeah, so, you're right. In other jurisdictions, it's been an established principle in the employment law. When we talk about onshore, the UAE, it's a new concept when it comes to employment law. Whilst discrimination has been there, but in an employment law settings, the first time we're seeing it in the UAE labour law.
Oh, wow.
If you look at the other jurisdictions like the DIFC, ADGM, they have had discrimination laws for a lot longer. Yeah. But what is discrimination? In a nutshell, it's where an employee is in a position to say that they have suffered less favourable treatment on certain grounds.
Right.
So people use discrimination quite loosely, but it needs to be within what we call as lawyers protected characteristics.
Okay.
So we're talking race, we're talking age, we're talking marital status, we're talking ethnicity, we're talking religion. Okay, so you need to, if you have any sort of claim for discrimination, you need to say, I've been discriminated against in the workplace because I'm a woman. Okay?
Right,
And then we need to look into that. Okay, so you're a woman, how are the men treated?
Yeah.
Or because I'm black, and how are the other people treated? So we need to look at it and put it into context. Because I've had a child. It was rosy before, I had a child and I came back, and clearly this is a trigger and I'm out the door, right? Or because I announced that I'm pregnant.
Yes.
So discrimination can be quite difficult to prove because it's factual, right?
Yes,
and I think that is the point. But we're finding employees are better now than before at recording.
Right, okay.
The episodes of discrimination or conduct which was less favourable based on those characteristics. Right. So, we've had cases where someone has kept a diary, spoken to HR, recorded different episodes whereby they're able to prove their case, at least file a grievance.
Right.
And we do find that where an employee's done a good job of recording, maybe speaking to a colleague, making sure that they've got their emails or whatever it is, WhatsApp messages, because we use everything.
Yeah, everything.
We use everything.
Yes.
We throw it all in, okay?
Whatever you've got, let's piece
whatever
it
you
together.
got, we throw it all in, right? If they've done a good job in recording what's happening in the workplace and it's in breach of the policies, because a lot of these companies have amazing policies. We're at equal opportunities, employer, dignity, and so forth. But where you find that the work culture is in breach of the law, I think employees are doing a good job at least raising an internal grievance. I've had some cases where, an employee's gone through the whole process internally. They've got the reports, they've got the complaints, so it really kind of makes my job easier. And then I'm in a position to go and say, look, this doesn't look good. What can we do to resolve it? To try and make it go away. I think the downside of that is that we don't have much case law. So there's not that much publicity in terms of, the cases that we deal with because they settle.
Yes. Yeah. So there's not enough out there in terms of...
There's not enough out
got it.
there.
Okay.
So if you look at maybe in the courts, there are not that many cases.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It doesn't mean that we're not dealing with them.
Yeah.
But I think employers are conscious of their corporate professional
reputation.
When it comes to discrimination. So, but what I find really encouraging, I think in the last, I would say 3-4 years, is the number of employers that we work with that will say, look, come in and do some training. Come and do training on bullying, harassment, discrimination, unconscious bias. Absolutely.
Fantastic.
A lot of the leading companies have called us in to speak to employees.
Amazing.
So they are taking that step to just say, we don't just want a handbook. We want to remind you what our policies are. We want to make sure that you are treating your peers respectfully.
Yep.
We're a melting pot, which basically means that we come from everywhere in the world. So, things like, social distancing for some cultures, being touchy-feely is great. Yep. Whereas for some cultures, it's not.
It's a HR case for some
people.
It's
an HR case, absolutely. So we talk about, what is it that makes you feel uncomfortable?
That's amazing.
And it's amazing. Every time I do that training, I always get one example I have never heard of before. Someone will say, I don't like it when somebody says, oh, you're glowing today. I find it offensive. Was I not glowing?
Right, I wish somebody would say that to me. I wish I was glowing.
Or, emails. If you write in caps, I find it offensive. So it's amazing.
Wow.
Like sometimes the sensitivities out there that are making people feel offended are really a real point for discussion to unpack it. Because once we have these conversations, it makes the workplace a better place. I think after training, somebody said to me, oh, I'm so happy you had that discussion because I have a colleague and he's always like touching my shoulder, and it's not in a offensive way, but we're now able to, I feel I can address it and say, look, actually, my background doesn't allow for that. So
interesting. I love how companies have evolved to actually bring in experts like yourself to talk about what could be deemed as discrimination or, being mindful of different cultures. Yeah, that's impressive.
I think so. It can be anything as what might seem like a typical example. Like, I don't know, we have our socials on Friday afternoon lunchtime. That's the time the rest of us go to the mosque for prayers.
Very true.
So that's discrimination on the grounds of my religion, because I'm being excluded because I want to be part of the social, but you're having it on Friday afternoon. So it's just things like that might not be done in bad faith necessarily.
Yeah.
It's just making sure there's that awareness that we find that those conversations, those training sessions really do improve work culture because we're having that discussion, because we're not necessarily meeting for drinks after work. Actually, maybe we should have these sessions Friday morning, where everyone's around. So there's no feelings of isolation and so forth. So I think we're evolving.
This is evolving.
Yes.
When you're speaking, I'm like, 10 years ago, I would never have heard of this.
No.
Yeah, even to say the words in a workplace, I think there's been discrimination because I'm a black woman. Yeah. Like, you might as well just leave, basically. Like, there's no point in raising it.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to ask, so if there is a discrimination case, say, if I use me as example, I'm a black lady, I feel like I've been discriminated against because of my race. Yeah. Do you find most people settle because organisations don't want that out there, their reputation. But does it mean that the individual tends to leave as well? Because that's quite an awkward situation to stay in.
Look, I think at the point someone walks into my office, it's more than likely they've either made a decision that they're going to leave or they've been terminated. Right. Okay. So or they're going through the process of, suffering some sort of discrimination. Very rarely have I come across a situation where someone says, look, I'm going through this at work. Let's raise a grievance, and then everything settles and then I go back to work. Yeah. So that tends to be, the sad kind of impact of it. But, you know, where we do go through those cases, I think companies realize that they need to pull up their socks,
That's
right?
it.
So the fact that organizations are really taking this seriously, you know, it's a great step forward. You know, there was a whole Black Lives Matter movement, and then, you know, all of a sudden in the UAE, we're having listening sessions about what your experiences are and so forth. And, you know, discrimination is not just race, right? So we're talking about disability discrimination. What adjustments are companies doing to facilitate those that are disabled within the workplace? So I think there is definitely progress, and it's a global issue.
Of course,
it's just not
exactly.
The UAE.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's really encouraging, actually. I didn't know a lot about this, to be honest. So we've touched on a lot of areas that would have, I would see, well, definitely for me, if I was going through something like this, a lot of emotional impact, mental health, well-being. This is a language that a lot of corporations here in this region are really investing in. Not just buzzwords, but really investing in. I'm quite fortunate that my firm, they do support that. Particularly as I've gone through a difficult season, I've seen it firsthand in regards to how important mental health and well-being is within the workplace, because work is such a big part of our lives, especially when it's quite a busy, demanding workplace and you're dealing with life. But I just wanted to check, because obviously you come across a lot of different scenarios. Are you seeing more when it comes to well-being, mental health with organisations, them taking it more seriously, not just for like PR and marketing?
Yeah, look, I think I've seen it more since COVID.
Okay.
Since the pandemic. I remember the firm that I was at, we did a webinar at the time. It's all webinars, right, during COVID on general well-being. And I think, you know, there were thousands of people who logged on. And that was, for me, like, wow, okay, so there is a real need. And you must remember, I think in the UAE during COVID, people were away from families. So there was a whole other dynamic for DXB, right? Yeah. Because we just didn't have the support structure that you would have perhaps in your home country. And, you know, one of the things that people like about Dubai is the fact that they can fly home. We're in the middle of the world and, you know, everyone's accessible.
Yes.
So that was gone. And I think companies really kind of started to take more ownership. I think that was the first time I realized we had this EAP, Employee Assistance Program.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't know. I was like, oh, okay.
So it wasn't started because of COVID, like it was there?
It was there. So a lot of corporates have always had this. It's linked normally to your medical insurance.
Right.
That you have this EAP. It wasn't new. It's just that it became more important.
Got it. Okay.
And that gives you, you know, access to counselors, to therapists and specialists. And it's, you know, anonymous, confidential from your employer. So it's a benefit that you have.
Yes.
So I've seen companies investing more in EAPs. I've seen them investing more in flexible working. I've seen hybrid working becoming more of a thing now, which really helps, I think, employees when it comes to kind of their mental health and general well-being. And I've seen so many more initiatives. Like I'm seeing companies that are now looking at, you know, menopause policies and so forth. So we're moving. And I think employers are now recognizing that it's not just about work, it's the whole person.
It's the whole thing.
If they're going to have you need to be fully engaged as an employee. So what does that mean? It means that you don't need to be stressed about everything else going on in your life, because that is where the company becomes more profitable. Employers are now understanding the link between employee engagement and profitability and retention. Once you get that, you know, then we're onto a winner. So I think employers are definitely wanting to retain staff. For the right reasons and looking to make adjustments to their policies and procedures when it comes to mental health and well-being. Because once you ignore that important element, you're going to have high turnover of staff.
For sure. Yeah.
You know, and one of the questions employees are now asking more before they move to a company is not how much am I going to get paid.
True.
Employees are asking, what is the work culture like? What is the work culture like? Employees are now at a stage where they would get paid less for good work culture.
Because it's so important.
Oh
my gosh. All the hours that we spend around work, at work, with people, I think probably COVID has shown people actually the value of our time and how life can change overnight. So what we're requiring more is so different. Even you hear people saying, I want to know, particularly here, does my medical insurance cover therapy? Because therapy is a big part of, my well-being, and it's expensive. So I want to know whether the medical insurance is good enough and therapy is covered. Before, no one's thinking about that. They just want to see what their salary is, what they're going to get. So I think it has changed a lot.
It has. And I think companies are also now recognizing the importance of even mentorship schemes so that you have an outlet. Mentees being able to talk to someone. I think when I started, I don't ever remember being linked up with like a senior employee and even just the reverse mentoring where now it's the youth coming in, that generation, mentoring the old ones and telling them, this is how it needs to be. This is how we want to be valued. This Gen Z is shifting.
They know what they want as well.
They know what they want, and they value mental well-being a lot more than we did when we started out. I mean, for us, we were just happy to get a job. And we would, no matter what the work conditions were,
we would put up with it.
We will put up with it. We were grateful to be there. But this generation, if they don't feel valued, if they don't feel respected, they will go. They will. And I remember having a discussion with another senior lawyer, and she was saying, what are we going to do about this generation? I said, well, there's nothing you can do. This is this generation. If they don't feel they're being valued, they will leave.
Retention is very hard.
Retention is very hard.
Yeah.
So I kind of have a little admiration for that. I'm just like, wow, I could never. I could never. But certainly a lot to be learned from the younger generation. So there's lots of groups now where professionals are coming together and they're supporting each other. I mean, some of the lawyers, African lawyers that I'm in touch with, Legal Minds, which was put together by a really good friend of mine, Leslie. People want to ask questions. Have you heard about this new law? What do I do in this situation? Absolutely different support groups that will assist people excel.
Amazing. I didn't hear about that. I'll do some research on that as well. I didn't hear about that group. One question I had, because you're very successful, I think you're doing great things.
Thank you.
If somebody wanted to go into the field and become an employment lawyer, eventually become an employment partner, to work within a legal industry, how did you start off? What would be the advice that you would give?
Look, I think I chose employment law because it's so varied. So it's not an area of law where tomorrow I'm doing the same thing. Today I'm doing immigration. Tomorrow I'm dealing with discrimination. And next time I'm dealing with health and safety in the workplace. Then I'm dealing with mental. So you're dealing with a really wide range of topics. And it's dynamic. So 2-3 years ago, we were talking about COVID. Now we're talking about the impact of AI.
Could you imagine?
On the workplace, okay? So, we're evolving. We're constantly evolving. It's now about AI and ESG and all these topical, areas. So it is really exciting, to be in an area of law that evolves so quickly. And I think it's also important to look at the impact that you can make on kind of a macro scale. So, I sit on the DIFC Employee Workplace Savings Scheme board in the DIFC. And, that's an impact on compensation and benefits and, how end of service gratuity is going. But then tomorrow I'm dealing with on a very individual, personal level, that I've been terminated or haven't received my money, and the ability to, I mean, we've worked with some cases where someone has got no money and we're able to get them 9 months, 10 months compensation.
Oh, wow.
This is life-changing for some people. Or extend their visa for a couple of months, and make sure that they get their flight ticket home,
some security,
some security. So the impact on a personal level is also a lot. So yes, I'm biased, but I really think it's one of those areas in law that you can make a meaningful change.
Yes, I agree.
And I love working in Dubai because we're now in the process of, really changing the laws and development. New concepts like equal pay. So equal pay is there, men and women, the same compensation for work of equal value. It's in the law, right?
It's there?
It's there. It's there.
I have to read this
It's there, black and white.
Okay.
So, whilst these were established principles in the UK many years ago, but even if you look at the UK, that principle was there in law, but the litigation came a long time after. So that's where we are now. So it's now more of awareness, and now it's for employees to start cases, and then we see how the courts are going to deal with it for the precedent, right? So I think it's really an important area. It's evolving. It's going to change workplace culture. And I never just wanted to be an employment lawyer that just does contracts. Right. I really want to be involved in making an impact.
Things that are making a difference.
Making an impact. That's where really the passion lies.
Yes.
So if anyone is thinking about employment law, absolutely.
Yep. Not being biased.
Being biased. But I think I remember, because I started my career as a trade union lawyer in the UK many years ago. And I remember when I came out here and speaking to recruiters, they were like, there is no work for you. You need to retrain.
Right.
I was like, oh my God, I'm really passionate about this area. They're like, become a corporate lawyer or something that I really wasn't interested in. But I realized that the skills for individuals it will always be here. And yes, we're a small set of employees. I think we all know each other, the employment lawyers in town.
I can imagine,
but, there is definitely a requirement. And it really kind of kicked off in the UAE after the recession, and there was massive layoffs. But what's interesting is to see the changing nature of instructions. I think when I got to the UAE, it was, we have a labor case against us. Can you come and sort it out? That's not it now. Now it's, can you look at our policies? Can you come and train us? What can we do in terms of making our compensation package more, fair, more attractive? Okay. So there is a shift, a really good shift. Yes. Of course, there will always be updates to employment contracts and termination advice. But even with termination advice, some employers are good. They're like, look, we're terminating, but we want to make sure they have a decent severance package. Those are the best companies.
Gosh, they are. Really considerate around, how they treat that individual, because they know the impact.
They know the impact. And those are the questions, some HR managers will have. They do say, we know she has a child, or he has a child in school. So what month are we in? Okay, so a couple of months at the end of the school term. So these are real considerations. So these are real considerations that are being taken into account, because it does impact the reputation.
Well, that's another thing. Exactly.
It really does. And I've met people say, actually, I've been terminated, but actually I've got a really good package. So it softens the blow as well. It softens the blow. And I'm not worried about my future for the next 3 to 6 months.
Makes a difference.
And that is brilliant. And we're also seeing changes in the immigration space with things like the golden visa. Where you're now, you've got your 10 years. I know the green visa is about to come out, where actually you lose your job, but it's not the end of the world. So I think we're moving in the right direction. I remain encouraged.
This has encouraged me a lot. I thought I knew enough about, because obviously working in legal, you know, you see a lot of the updates, you speak to the lawyers on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But this has left me quite positive, actually. I thought this topic was going to be like, oh, it's still not there yet, and it's very difficult. But yeah, it's
we're developing. We're moving forward. Is if I'm going to leave that as kind of the overarching statement, I think we are moving forward. I'm encouraged by, you know, the inquiries that I've got. Yeah. Yes, there are still some sad stories that I get. And I recognize that not everyone can afford legal advice, you know, but, you know, there are pro bono clinics, there are authorities that are there. You know, we do our own CSR. We have so many webinars to try and at least give the basic information. Just make sure that it's there in the public domain. Yeah. You know, we have our Instagram, you know, which we kind of put up from time to time. From time to time,
that's
just,
really good.
you know, give a little bit of information. LinkedIn, whenever there's updates, I'm always like sharing that. So, you know, it is being well received.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And I think it's looking positive.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and congratulations when it comes to the work that you do. I think it's really impactful. You know, people just want little snippets of advice. Nobody wants to be reading long articles and so forth.
Yes,
you know, we're in the scroll culture now.
Short, quick.
So short, quick. Okay, that's interesting. So, you know, really kind of progressive, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
No worries.
Let's Talk DXB. Real conversations by real people.